Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place. Getting super real today, and we're going to talk about some of the nuts and bolts of being open, of exploring expansivity in your relationships. When you get right down to it, eventually that's going to mean not just psychological differentiation, but actually being in different spaces.
What's the day-to-day?
Okay, so what do you do? Here's a question I got that I get all the time, but oftentimes people are sort of sheepish to ask me because I think there's a little shame that comes up around not feeling okay when we're apart from our partner. But here's the thing. If we have a committed partner that we're in a relationship to, what do we do when they go out on a date? Like literally, what do we do?
What kinds of things? How do you spend your time?
What do you do? And what do you do to manage the feelings, to navigate the overwhelm that comes up? And what do you do with yourself, literally? It is so easy to focus on getting to the point of going out on dates and then forget to make a plan for the during part. So we're going to get into that.
Okay.
When you and I first started really dating, I noticed that you had a particular tendency that I see a lot now in clients.
Okay.
When I would go out on dates, you would work.
Oh, yes.
You would buckle down.
I do remember that. Yeah.
You would spend that time at your job, at your day job, even though this was generally at night.
Yep.
You would spend your time doing more of your day job.
I'm going to say, do not recommend.
Why? How did that go for you?
So I would buckle down and I would do work, and then you would come home, and what kind of mood would I be in?
Oh, that's
not
true.
A good one. I would have felt like I had. So, I mean, on the one hand, I was just avoiding whatever experiences I was going to have, whatever feelings I was going to have about you being out on a date. Because, being polyamorous doesn't mean you don't have feelings about what happens when
it definitely does not mean
your
you don't
partners do other things. Oh, it doesn't. So I'd be avoiding those feelings by digging into work, which also means that when I came up out of work and you came home, I wouldn't have dealt with them. And there you'd be.
Yeah.
So it would, and then I would also treat it as like some extra work I was doing. Well, it was extra work, but when you came home, I would feel like I needed something from you.
Like you'd earned something?
Like I'd earned something. Like you went and did this good thing, this fun thing, and I did this hard thing. So let's focus on what I did because it was hard, and not let's focus on the fun thing, expansive thing that you just did, which would just generally be more fun to focus on.
And I mean, so this is one of the tendencies that we have found each of us can fall into. What I'm going to name this, but push back. Please tell me if this isn't right.
Let's see what we got.
It sounds like you martyred yourself.
Oh, that's the word. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So the martyr archetype, right? The like feeling into it, being in the martyr archetype, it comes very easily to you. We've talked about this lots. It's a place where you generally feel pretty comfortable.
It's one of my smoothest features. I can martyr. Like, you pick a situation, I can find a way to martyr it.
Right. So here's the thing, because the actual thing that you did, deciding to work, that works for me. And I don't feel martyred. I feel
that's my experience.
But I think this is one of the keys to this whole episode is figuring out what to do to literally what to do with the time when your partner is out, when your partner is doing something other than you. Someone other than you. Figuring out how to spend that time is going to look individual because you're different. It is another feature of the differentiation to acknowledge that it will look different. And at first, I didn't notice that this was causing a problem for us, and it actually came later when I was coaching someone who I noticed the same pattern in. Oh, yep. You're like earning. You are doubling down on the fact that you feel a little bad. You're not
Yep.
dealing with the feeling. And now on top of it, I can add this. Look, I did more work. I brought more money into our house, more. I did more work. I showed up to this thing.
It's martyrdom, and it's a way of being one up.
Okay. So you put yourself in the one
Yeah.
up position. So you take the moral high ground, and one up comes out of Terry Reel's work, right? I think that's
Yeah.
probably where you learned the term.
Yeah.
I I appreciate you knowing that now because you've changed your tactic.
Mm.
And I think it's gone really well for us that you've changed your tactic. I've dated a bunch over the last couple of years since we've been in a sort of post quarantine time. And I see you doing something different. So, how do you generally handle yourself when I'm out now?
Well, I look for things to do that I like to do. I think about when you leave. I I talk with you and think, I'm paying attention to what you're doing, because,
Mhm.
and I say that, I call that out because part of the working was just ignoring that it was happening, just
Right.
not dealing with it.
So, like, total, not just distraction
No.
in the moment, but also just like totally um pushing away the
Yeah.
fact that this was happening.
Yeah.
So you weren't sitting with your
And
feelings
so
or even acknowledging the
not
thing.
at all, not
Okay.
at all.
And that
Especially
goes way back.
the kind of work I do is extremely sort of dissociative work. I don't it has nothing to do with my emotions.
Tens of software
As,
architect.
yeah, I
So
mean, it could come up, but that's not the way the job is designed. So instead, now when you're going to leave, I get into that space as much as I can. Hey, there's you going on a date, and here's me watching you go out on a date. Um and then while you're gone, I stay in that spot. I am with I'm in a relationship with you who is developing a relationship with somebody else. I mean, that sentence doesn't sound scary at all, because you're in a lot of relationships. But now I stay in it, and then from that spot, I think about the fact that you're going to come home. I'm curious, like what will have happened. So I imagine, and then I anticipate you coming back. I
mm.
think that's one of the big things that change, that you experience the changes. I'm so interested to see what happens when you come home.
So that's really sweet for me. I feel very seen when I hear you say that, that you are interested, that you're engaged. I know that not everybody is able to pull that off
Mhm.
yet. And so I just wanted to say, how long did it take you to get there?
Oh, many years, many years. Yeah, even making the decision of, okay, this is I I think I see how this could go really well for both of us. Even from that spot, it took a while to develop the practices of that would get me there.
Right. So let's get to the nuts and bolts,
Yeah.
like a layer deeper, right? So if we first think about having a plan, what I hear is that you have a plan, and the plan isn't so much the specific thing you're going to do, but the way you're going to
Absolutely.
approach
Hmm.
the time.
Yeah.
And I I'm hearing you describe something that I really love, which is that you pay attention to your part of our exit and re-entry, right? So if I'm leaving, so we share a home, and so not everybody will experience it this way. If you're currently living separate from a committed partner, you won't experience the physical leaving the same way. But we share a home, and so when I physically leave, one option is for you to literally pay no attention to me, to turn your back, to be heads down in your work, to not say goodbye, to schedule a meeting so that you're conveniently not
Right.
available, right? Those
Yeah.
are all options. But what I've noticed is if you attend to the exit, right, there is an opportunity there. And I know a lot of times this is hard to hear, but there's an opportunity to deepen your intimacy, to be vulnerable to the fact that, to like be vulnerably exposed. Like, yeah, I am here. I am. I have excitement. I have nervousness. I'm scared, I'm sad, I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling, to be able to share that to some degree without asking your partner to fix it, without asking them, because that was the
Yeah.
key for me, is when you shifted from the buckle down, like you'd not ignore me leaving, but you'd be very, very focused. When you shifted to have some space for me to be excited, and also for me to have the layers of feelings around being nervous about how you might feel, when you shifted to pay attention to the exit, it got more fun to go out
Which
and
is,
less scary.
and that's more fun for me, because it's actually more fun to hang out with you and talk to you than to work at my job.
Slightly, just a little bit.
Just a little,
Okay.
just edge them out, edge it out there.
So paying attentions to exits
Mhm.
and the reentry,
And
because
the
I
reentry.
also heard how you, and this has been something that's been very important for me to name myself, is when you come home, because you're coming home to our shared home, like if you like sneak in and don't disturb me and I stay asleep, that doesn't work for me.
You're right.
That actively upsets me. That feels like the word sneak, like even in how I
Mhm.
described it there,
Mhm.
it feels sneaky. It reminds me of ickiness. I just don't like it. So me knowing what I need for that re-entry time, that reconnecting time is so important.
And we have both learned about what you need, what I need, by having conversations about it
Screwing it up.
repeatedly, and then by screwing it up and having the opportunity to say, so the experience we just had, this is what it was like, and this is what I noticed about how I felt, and actually talking about how it went. And one of the reasons it took years for me to figure it all out is I didn't really want to talk about it. And even when I did, I didn't want to look closely at what my actual experience was.
Yeah. I think that's the exciting part, is this is an important way of getting to know yourself. Getting to
Mhm.
know yourself is, it's no joke. Like this is, it's not just that it's hard work. It's also eh, it's how we grow up.
Yes.
Right? So like
Yes.
when you and I were first together doing this dating thing, you were in your mid 40s. I was in my mid 30s. Oh, it would have been easy for us, and I bet we did pretend that, well, we're grown ups, we should know how to do this. I didn't
Oh,
know anything.
that is a recipe for disaster.
That's exactly,
I
I
should
think,
know
what
how
we
to
did.
do this, so I'm going to do it the way it occurs to me to do, without thinking about who I am, who you are, and how it's all actually going to work.
And then just getting the actual input. Like your body was
Right.
giving you clues, right?
Yeah.
You were getting feelings and sensations that were telling you how you actually were experiencing this.
Yeah.
And I hear that you would push them out, close them away. And when you opened yourself up to be present to the feelings,
Yep.
all of them, the physical sensations and the emotional feelings, well, I mean, that's not always easy. So resourcing yourself
Yeah.
is the other big.
Yep.
So I think of like exits and reentries, and like understanding what it is that works, what doesn't work, the fact that it gets to be different, and you're probably going to have to collaborate on how you get the needs met. And it's not necessarily simple,
No,
because it's
because
not
you're
always
most
possible to do all
likely.
the things that you want.
Yeah.
We can give some examples, but then there's the exit and reentry, and then there's the, how do I resource myself when the feelings get overwhelming, or before the
Before
feelings
the
get
feelings get
overwhelming,
overwhelming. Right.
ideally.
Yeah.
Um, because so we have a bunch of tools now, but when I think back to say very early days, and I think back to when we had a lot of little kids running around, and so you going out with your other partner and me staying home, and me staying home with a
With a
whole
lot of.
full of little
Mhm.
children. So there's a bunch of kids under the age of 10, like chaos. One of the things that I couldn't do to resource myself was just distract myself. I couldn't just like turn into work back then. I had to be present to these children and to bedtime and whatever else was happening.
Yep.
And so, if I could go back to that time, one of the things I wish I had done was resource myself with a tool that I could use to, in context, in that complicated situation, to soothe my body, to soothe the sensations, and make it more manageable to be present to the situation that I invited myself into. So,
And
like,
what tools would help you with that?
well, the two that work best now are breath work and neurosomatic intelligence. Those are the two
Mhm.
sets of tools that work best for me today. At the time, I tried meditation and I would try making it fun for the kids, and we'd sit and play, like we'd sit and do
Mhm.
little, 1 minute and 2 minute meditations, um and it worked okay. But because I couldn't just turn all of my focus into being in, say, a 30 or 60-minute guided something or other,
Right?
it didn't have the full effect that I think it would have now. So I wish I'd had more easy to drop in tools. So right now, one of the first ones I use is the Huberman breath, the physiological
Yeah.
sigh, right?
Mhm.
I'll use that one. That's pretty simple. It's quick inhales, two quick inhales, and then an audible sigh. So right? Like just doing that. Well, even doing it now. Yep.
Yep.
I felt my voice lower and I felt myself kind of lean back into my body. Treating my body as the intelligent system that it is, and giving it the nurturing kindness that it wants in the moment of my overwhelm. That's what I wish I'd had. I did have one tool that worked very well back then, and is contextually, it worked for me. It sat in those times.
Mhm.
I would knit or crochet.
Oh,
The
okay.
repetitive motion, so I could have, like, the kids could be playing, they do their Legos and whatever, and we'd be post dinner, and I could be knitting, and that repetitive motion was meditative. It would engage
Hmm.
me, and it would help me just be present and not completely dissociate. Because that's what would happen to me a bunch otherwise. I would dissociate. I would kind of disappear.
That's what my version of dissociation. I mean, I get into the computer, I'm just gone.
Just
I'm not in
all
my
ones and
feelings. It's
zeros.
all ones and zeros in there. And or I mean, how often would you come back to a clean kitchen?
Oh,
Because
the cleaning trick.
that's what I
I
do.
never
That's
take that one.
No, that's not yours. That's mine. And that's important. We don't have the same tools, approaches to
Right,
these
so
times because
because
we're not the same person.
cleaning it's, for me, it reminds me of being punished as a child,
Mhm.
because that's how cleaning was. Cleaning was a punishment. So for me, if I clean the kitchen while you're gone on a date, like, yeah, I'm just
Oh,
doubling
that's
up. That
doubling
would be
down
that
big
would be a
time.
bad move for me.
Yep.
But this is why it's so important. So when you're resourcing yourself, I like to think about it in three different categories. There's self-regulation, like I just described, the physiological sigh, or you could lean on neurosomatic intelligence tools, which Ken and I have recorded a bunch of. They're available on YouTube. You can see a bunch of them. Um, and we can put the link for
Yep.
that in this episode. Then there are other self-regulation tools like breath work and affirmations. Like
Right. Yeah.
like speaking kindly to myself out loud matters a lot. And I have to say it out loud. I
Mm.
have plenty of clients who do better writing it out, right? And I have one client right now who they need to vent a lot first. So they'll vent out a bunch of thoughts, but we recently put a limit on their venting, because they found that what would happen is they could actually get themselves into a cycle where, oh, now they're just cycling around, venting more and more and more. They're actually building up rather than venting out.
Mhm.
So they started putting a limit of 1 page in their journal. They could vent
Oh,
for 1 page, and after that it was positive affirmations, their
oh, I like that.
reinforcement of why they are choosing this path, what what their values are that
Mhm.
help them stay aligned with this, and writing down what are the supports you wish you'd put in place. Like, so there you are, you're in the
Yeah. Oh, that's a
situation.
very usful thing. You're in the
Say,
situation, you
oh,
haven't done it. What do you wish you would have done?
what do I
That's
wish I could
great.
do right now? And that particular question I think is really helpful for me, because I will often get to a spot where I'm like, I don't have what I need. And then if I ask myself, okay, what do you wish you had put in place? And then I'm like, "Hmm, crickets, huh? Oh, what I wish is that you would come back and fix it. Like
Ah,
my inner
okay.
child,
Yep.
is in particular for me, my inner 5-year-old child wants you to come home and fix it.
I see.
It's
So,
not anything
there isn't,
specific.
yeah,
There's
there
no
isn't a
answer to
thing.
that. No,
Yeah.
because that part of me is on board theoretically with the idea of you going and playing with other people, and then gets panicky when you actually do so. And part of my psychological work is reparenting that part and staying with her and being present to her feelings. And I experience myself as multiple, and that doesn't feel scary to me. But when I let her, this inner 5-year-old, run the show,
Mm.
that feels scary. So I have to allow myself to stay present enough to be able to reparent that part. It's not always easy.
No. And so, yeah. So what do you do for that,
So
for that 5-year-old?
for that
What
5-year-old,
can you
so
do?
she relies very highly on artistic expression.
Mhm.
That's the best tool for her. Um, when it's my inner 14, 15-year-old, go for a run. Totally
Oh,
different expression, right? Like if I'm feeling like cranky and I have like disgust face on and I'm all pissy, put my running shoes on and go
okay.
for a run, even if it's only to the end of the street and back, because they want different things.
That's really interesting because for me, it's the opposite. I was thinking about my teenager would absolutely go and play piano. And I've done that. I've spent a bunch of time on the piano while you were gone. Um, but the younger one is the one who wants to go running in the woods.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
but for me, it's flip flop
We all have
because we
such
all have
different
different experiences.
experiences, right? So in the self-regulation category, we've got NSI tools, self-affirmations, we've got breathing tools, all breath work, guided imagery, meditations work for many people. There's also soothing self-touch, just literally touching my own body and reminding myself that I'm here. I mean, giving myself the positive input that like I'm here in my body and I'm safe. It's been a hard sell for me, but I haven't always wanted to be here in a body.
Mhm.
I came here a bit resistant. I mean, here I am incarnated, but a little resistant to the fact. So simply soothing myself and allowing myself to be present to the body that wants soothing, and knowing that I get to do that too. I don't need someone else to do that. I get to do that for myself. Movement, all different kinds of movement, and music.
Sure. I
Music.
mean, I
This is
think,
probably, I mean, the rescue playlist is probably my earliest move. I made my first rescue playlist back on my first iPhone a million years ago. And oh, actually, before that, on my iPod. My
your
iPod. Oh
iPod.
my goodness. Um, so a rescue playlist of songs that help me re-engage with hope. It's not for me, my rescue playlist isn't about going deeper into the sadness or deeper into the anger, though some people have playlists that help them do that and that works good for them. For me, when you're out, one of the things I am dealing with is my fear of abandonment. And my fear of abandonment is both mine to work with and ours to work with,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So the my fear of abandonment isn't yours to fix, but I love that you hold it so tenderly. So one of the things I've seen you do is remind me, send me the reminder, like, hey, you can put on a rescue playlist
Yeah.
and just listen to it, even if everything's unspooling. Because something like music, when you're unspooling, it doesn't seem like it will help. And I've heard people say that very thing, like, I'm unspooling, nothing's gonna help.
Yeah, and I just heard somebody say something recently, that so they were in a particular mood and they're like, "Hmm, no, I wanted to. I wanted to be that. Sometimes we want to
Yes.
unspool. Like, no, I don't want the music to interrupt my unspooling.
Yep.
And I mean, it's worth it while at that point saying, okay, who wants to unspool in there? And is it everybody? Like, is everybody on board? Because maybe that's the thing to do, but
Right.
maybe it's not.
So one of the tools that I use, and I use this tool all over the place. If I'm going to let myself just feel it all the way, if I'm going to be like, I'm going to sit in this discomfort, I put a timer on. And sometimes the timer is in my phone. And sometimes the timer is like, I'll put on a movie or something that I know the length of. So I know, like, when it's done, I'm going to go get in the shower and I'm going to like wash this away, whatever it is. I mean, I'll choose sometimes a really sad movie to just be in, and I'm just going to be with this crappy feeling. Yeah.
Yep.
And we get to choose that. One of the important parts there is to again use this as a way to recognize the differentiation. While your partner going on a date may be the inspiration for the moment, it's my moment. I'm alive in this moment.
Right.
And so recognizing that I'm having this experience, and while you and your actions may have inspired the experience I'm having, they are not the cause of it by themselves, because I'm in here and I'm adding into all of that. And that always helps me up to a point.
Up to a point.
Yep. Because then there's this point after which I am unreachable. Everything's a disaster, right? The full tidal
Okay.
wave has come. The city is decimated. I can barely even talk about my parts. I have fully unhinged. I have unglued. I have unspooled. And in that case, I mean, having a safety plan and knowing that I can stay safe is really the bottom line for me. Do I know that I can stay safe? And for me, this doesn't have anything to do with non-monogamy, because there are other things that can create this level
Yeah.
of feeling unsafe. And knowing that I have a plan and resources to help me self-regulate to a degree and to help me lean into my support system. So another thing I keep handy is, who are 3 people who I could text? Because one person isn't enough, really. We really need to work on community, because not everybody's available all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Who are 3 people I could text if I start to feel really edgy? And can I just ask to be witnessed? I don't need you to give me advice. I don't need you to fix it, but could I just be witnessed in this ouch that I've got?
I wanted to you mentioned something in passing that is a really good, or can be for a lot of people, I think, self-regulation tool, which is a shower.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Colds, depending on how
Whatever.
you
Yeah,
respond.
but it has a good chance of bringing you into your body um in a pleasant way or a shocking way, or both, depending on how you're feeling.
The last really intense time I had, when we were rebuilding our house, things got really, really intense, and a lot of my tools were missing, like literally missing. They were packed up, and we were displaced while we were doing that. And so, I had one night when I got highly dysregulated, and I went for a run down the length of the field and back a couple times. Um, and then I got in the shower. I just got in the cold shower. I was going to go get in the river, but I didn't think I could get down to it safely. It didn't feel like I could do that safely. So I was taking care of myself, got into a full-on cold bath shower. 3 minutes later, I felt completely different.
So
A cold plunge does a lot to reset the nervous system. It's not necessarily pleasant, and I'm a big fan of pleasure, but it does reset the nervous system. On the other hand, the second category of things that I think of in the scheme of like, how can I deal with all these feelings, is pleasure. They're like, so you used to turn to work. Now I turn to work, and when I do, I turn to the most pleasurable work I have.
right.
So whatever it is I'm really enjoying creating, whatever I'm digging into, and I'm like, oh, I want to research that. I'm coming up with questions, or I'm developing some new part of my curriculum. Dig into that, because that's juicy and fun. There are so many ways to experience pleasure. I mean, I couldn't possibly, your entire podcast devoted to
Right.
it. But a bath, a walk, engaging in a really fun conversation, artistic expression of all kinds, all sorts of expressive activity, moving your body in a million different ways.
Reading, movies.
Right. Baking, teaching yourself
Yeah.
something new from YouTube. There's so many ways to find pleasure. Masturbation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of my primary tools when you're on a date, because for me, jealousy, I can shift jealousy into an erotic space relatively smoothly now. I've practiced it. And because I can, masturbation's really fun. Edging in particular,
Hmm.
right? Like not going all the way to orgasm, but playing
Yeah.
with that. Yeah, that's really, really fun.
That is, I've used that several times.
Yeah,
Um,
today probably. No.
I was thinking of while you're on dates, but I guess we could tally it up if you like.
I think that when we think about pleasure, some people automatically lean toward like what's the erotic pleasure, and
But
some
there's
of us
lots of kinds of
forget to.
pleasure,
So there's so many kinds of pleasure, and let's
and
include
include the
all
erotic.
of the erotic, which doesn't
Mhm.
have to be orgasm seeking. I mean, your erotic self is, yeah, enormous. I One of my favorite things I think I ever did while you were out doing something else was just take a walk in, we have a private backyard, and all the kids were gone, and I just took a walk in less clothes than I typically would, much
Hmm.
less clothes than I typically would. And it was really, really pleasurable to just be present in my own space without even your gaze pointed at me. Like
Okay.
not like
That's
just present in the forest that we live in. Very, very different. I I don't know that I would have thought to do it, except I was trying to jostle myself out of this, like, what's Ken doing?
yeah.
And so I find this is why it's so exciting to play at this edge of our expansivity, is it brings me to my knees over and over and over again, not just in the dirty way. No, it brings me
Yeah.
this insight of like, oh my gosh, I got to get creative here.
That's what I was thinking. Creativity. It inspires creativity. What are you going to do today? What am I going to do today to self-regulate, to bring myself pleasure, to be present in this moment,
Right,
fully present, and enjoy it?
right.
That's a fun creativity exercise for me.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a third group of things.
Okay.
So self-regulation, pleasure. The third group that I like to lean into is co-regulation. So I mentioned having people to text.
Hmm.
Having other people who you can lean on or you can enjoy space and time with is phenomenal. And that doesn't have to mean I schedule a date when you schedule a date. I might. It's possible that has happened. I think that's happened once in all of the time we've been open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It hasn't lined up
it just, yeah, just I so for us that's, and I mean I know that's also because of the complexity of our life. It often hasn't lined up because one of us needed to
because
be
it doesn't
here
actually
taking
make
care of home
sense to
stuff.
line that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So co-regulation, seeking out co-regulation with friends, and that can be like talking on the actual phone, simply like engaging, excuse me, engaging fully in the experience of being with another person, even for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But there's a trick to this. If you're exploring non-monogamy and the people that you have relied on for support throughout your life don't understand that,
Right.
it can
Now,
be a little tricky to seek out that support, because you might feel like you're either having to hide something if you're not out about your non-monogamy, or that you're having to um manage their negativity. Like if you are out but they have negative feelings, you might get yourself into a spot where you're now managing their negativity about your experience, and since you're having a difficult time now, the non-monogamy can get blamed, when really I mean at core, if we're talking about a date in particular, let's just like name it. So frequently non-monogamy is about like, oh, they're having sex with someone else, they're having intimacy with someone else. Well, what if they're on a date with somebody they don't even like, and that's not even happening? Or what
yeah,
if they're exploring a deep friendship? Like, we want to be able to engage in our whole self while our partner is doing other things.
other things. That was, yeah, all
But
of these
the
things that,
monogamous script doesn't
yeah,
have space for that. And
yeah.
so when I bring that, I have a distinct memory of one of the first times I was really hurting. You were out, you were gone for a weekend with your other partner, and I was hurting. I did not have any tools yet. This was all new, barely had any language even. Um And I turned to a friend who basically told me that I was crazy and we were all crazy and this was just a bad idea.
That doesn't sound helpful.
It did not help. I wound up dyeing my hair blue that weekend. I did not cut bangs.
Yeah,
I
okay,
didn't cut
that's
bangs, but I
good for
did
you.
dye my hair blue that weekend. I mean, it was a coping choice, and I didn't really mind it. Like my hair was colored for a while, and I didn't mind that. But I did it because I spooled out, and then when I reached out for help, I reached out for co-regulation that had worked so many times before. I was met with just a resounding thud and blame, and then
Mm,
I felt like I was being blamed for my own pain. Yes, I was experiencing this new thing, and it was unnerving, but now I was also feeling like it was my fault. I did this to myself. I was it was like I was told I was self-harming. And
okay, so the trick to co-regulation is to find people that are actively supportive of you,
yeah, of
not
you as you
of
are
you
now.
as you are.
And so that is one of the trickiest pieces to this is like as you're developing community, you may not feel like you may not be ready to be out about this, and you might never be out. So one option is to develop community amongst like an online community where there are people who you can connect to more deeply and you can reach out to and share this with. Because if you're not able to be out in your general life, that doesn't mean you can't have community support. I mean, luckily we have all this tech
Yeah.
that allows us to connect to others. And for me, having someone who I can call and just say like, I just need to say some stuff and then just breathe with you. Could we just like breathe and I'm gonna know that you're breathing and we're just gonna and then I think this might pass. And more often than not,
Yeah.
it does. And so then we get to the final piece, which we touched on a little bit earlier. So there's exits and entries.
Yeah.
Planning your exit and entry requires, I think, bumping up against some edges, like doing some stuff that doesn't work to find
Yeah.
out what
Hmm.
does. And sometimes it's different depending on what your partner's leaving to do, how long they're going away for. But I think that when people have made exit and reentry plans, I've seen far more successful navigation of the inevitable roller coaster that
Yeah.
happens. So I think of exits and reentries for dates that just might last, a few hours, but they also, it applies to weekend trips, vacations. I know somebody recently who, their partner left for months to go away. Like planning for not just okay your exit but also your reentry, like what do you need, it makes a huge difference. So what do you do to plan it? I need to be honest about what I need. One of the things
Yeah.
I need is a lot of reassurance, and I have felt a fair amount of shame about the amount of reassurance
Hmm.
I have seemed to need over the years. You've never made me feel ashamed about that at all, but I don't think that has something to do with this like professional face that there is. Like I'm out in the world doing this work, but I'm a real person
Yeah.
just figuring this out too, like making mistakes and discovering new parts of myself and new ways that I might not know how to navigate what I'm up against. So asking for reassurance for me isn't just about saying I need reassurance. Sometimes I have to actually give you the words and
Yes.
say, could you please tell me this?
And that is tremendously helpful. Um, when you first started doing that, I wondered, like, is this going to work? Because you just told me the words to say. But the thing is, um, I had said enough words that you knew that I was being supportive. I was actively supportive.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I was saying the words as a script, but you were giving me a what,
There's like a
like
scaffold, like
take the
a
yeah, take this support that you're offering me and have it be shaped like this. Use these words. If the support comes in that shape, it will land so much more strongly. So it's not I'm not pretending to support you by saying these words you ask me to say.
Right.
I'm providing you with, well, what you know you need.
Yeah. And asking asking for reassurance. So asking for reassurance about my role, about our life, but also asking for reassurance like, so we have agreements. It's reasonable for me to say, we have agreements.
Mhm.
Would you like to review them before you leave? Because I would feel better if we reviewed them. So I would like to review them.
Yeah.
And we can collaborate on that. We don't necessarily need to do that every time. And we don't necessarily need to review our whole holistic relationship agreement, but we might want to review a little bit about what we've agreed to. And that reassurance, it reminds me that we came to this. We designed this opening process. We decided to embark on this adventure thoughtfully, mindfully. And that reminds me when I see our written words, it reminds me that this was well thought out. So it's not just a reminder of like, it's not about you knowing the rules. It's about, oh, we did this together.
Yeah.
Because our relationship agreement isn't really, at this point, there aren't a lot of rules in it. Now it's more about like it's a written down conversation that we had. This is how we feel. This
Yeah.
is the value that we have around
Yeah.
this.
It has become more a direct expression
Around
of our values rather than the guidelines around what those values,
like how we behave,
how we
those
behave. Yeah.
values. But that took time.
Mhm.
And asking for reassurance by saying like, hey, would you mind just like looking at this with me so that I can remember? And that has gone really well for me and has left me feeling settled and reminded just how thoughtfully we have done this.
Yeah.
And if you haven't done this thoughtfully, if you have felt a little rushed or you're realizing now that you don't necessarily have a plan, that's pretty normal. I mean,
Mhm.
it's normative. I see people all the time who are 4, 5, 6, 7 years into their exploration of opening, and they're like, "Oh, I read the books, but it's time for me to put some practices. I
Mhm.
think we need to go through this again and really get more granular and like, what is it that we're doing this for? How are we doing this? How are we living our values?"
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what I do. It's what I do in my group program, the year of opening. It's what I do in my private work. It's not so much about solving problems as giving you really clear, yeah, scaffolding is the word, like
Scaffolding,
to
something
help
to,
you, build the thing you want to build.
when we first got together, I mean, that's when it started to affect you because you were in a relationship with me. But for most of my life up until then, I thought of romance, relationships, love, all those things, that there was this like there's this value to winging it. Like
Spontaneity.
spontaneity is somehow more a stronger standpoint than planning and doing. Now, so I lived most of my life, had most of my relationships before you, spontaneously, just, you know, doing it that way. This is better for me. I like the explicit, um, let's talk about what we're doing. Let's plan what we're doing. What time would work for you to have sex with me today?
Yeah.
These things make for a life that works so much better for me and makes the complexity of our relationship
Yeah. Tolerant, not
manageable,
yeah.
and exciting.
Doable.
Exciting. It
Mm,
turns, yeah, that's it. It turns the complexity from overwhelming to exciting.
that's a big
It's a
difference.
big difference.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is something I see all the time. When you and I shifted from valuing this this mythical idea, this is just a modern, a contemporary myth that it's the rom-com myth, that
Yep.
spontaneous, unplanned romance and relationship is the pinnacle of romantic.
Yeah.
It is the goal.
I
That
mean,
is
look at
the
the
end.
engagement story.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
You're
this is
supposed to be
supposed to come out of nowhere.
surprised.
Yeah, never supposed to
So
see it coming.
right. So when we shift away from that particular mythology of relationship into one that says, what if we plan and co-create? This is our love as a collaborative act of expressing ourselves. It's art. It's something we're making together.
Yeah,
That feels much more delicious to me.
me too.
But totally see what you're saying about that inclination to keep everything spontaneous, because somehow that's better. Somehow that's truer, more authentic.
More authentic, yeah, I don't
It's
know.
more John Cusack holding the boombox over his head or something,
He
and
had
the
to go get that boombox. It wasn't just, he needed to have one. He had to pick out the song. He had to cue it up and have it ready.
even your 80s rom-coms might have needed some planning.
Might have.
Okay. I I'm loving that. I think that this particular question, understanding what to do when all of the overwhelm comes up in this very practical scenario that everyone who opens is going to go through in some way or another, it's so multifaceted. There are so many ways that you could meet this challenge, that you could grow through this challenge. And I want to hear about it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna post about this on Instagram as well. But I want to hear, how do you meet these challenges?
Mhm.
What do you do to prepare for the exits and re-entries? What works for you? What has not worked for you? These stories, I think, help us as a community, as a group of people who are doing something that's reimagining relationships.
Yeah.
Like, this helps everyone, because people who are doing monogamy or some version of monogamy, they can benefit from these things too.
Mhm.
Nothing we said here actually needs to be limited to the non-monogamous scope at all.
Yep.
It's about really being present to the practical practices of differentiation, of being I and thou, of being me, you, and allowing for there to be space that physically manifests
Yep.
as you're over there. And so I have to deal with the parts of me that want to be enmeshed and entangled practically. Okay. Really powerful. I'm really, really glad you shared this. If you have been thinking about opening up, but you're not sure how ready you are, I want you to go to joliquiz.com, joliquiz.com. That is where you'll find a 10-question quiz made out of my depth psychological research in relationships and jealousy specifically. But that quiz will help you figure out where you are on a scale from, oh gosh, we are not ready, to, yep, I'm ready. How do I do this in the scope of, how can I open up happily? Can I do this? Is this feasible? Is it possible? Go take the quiz and then find out where you are and join me at a salon. I've got a free salon coming up just about every month this year. I hope you'll join me to find out how you can open up well. And if you're already open, it's probably a good idea to come by, because a lot of people have noticed that their opening had some gaps. Ours certainly did.
Oh,
It's
wow.
okay if yours
Yes.
did. Absolutely. Join us at the next salon. You can also find the salon sign up at openeasier.com. There's no one right way to design your relationship. And lots of people, actually about 25%, according to a recent national survey, are interested in some type of open relationship. But how do you know if you are ready to open up happily? Not everyone is, and that's no problem. I've got a 60-second quiz that will give you the answer. And even better, you'll walk away with your next step, whether you're good to go or not so much when it comes to opening up. And this is no BuzzFeed nonsense. I personally designed this quiz from my years of academic research. Go to joliquiz.com. That's joliquiz.com, and find out if you're ready to open up happily and what to do if you are or if you're not.